I understand you jump between these two places. Is it due to I guess, because of the design studio requirements, or how does it work?
Yeah, I consider it like we have three HQs at Airfoil. So one in Toronto, one in Singapore, and one in Seoul. So I don't go to Seoul as often, but I basically split my time between Toronto and Singapore. And given that we are facing a blizzard right now in Toronto, I think it's a pretty decent strategy, at least from that perspective. But part of it for us is for our North American HQ, we wanted to hire in a place where we felt that the talent quality was very good. There are a lot of folks that were experienced also in finance, which would be very helpful. But at the same time was not in San Francisco or New York or Los Angeles. But then the reason that we've grown a team, especially in Singapore, aside from when we started our engineering vertical at the company, we found that the talent quality was phenomenal there, and our head of engineering is based there and from there. But also because, honestly, if you just look at user adoption, right, Southeast Asia is ahead. So in the US, we haven't really seen in the past 2 years, if we're talking about mass market adoption, we haven't seen the numbers tick up quite that much. But in Malaysia, in Vietnam, in Thailand, across Southeast Asia, we've seen a lot of adoption. And there's a decent regulatory framework for crypto companies in Singapore. And we also launched our fund last year. We established that there, but in part for that reason. And so gradually more and more of our headcount has actually drifted to Singapore.
I see. And yeah, I guess, what's that? Especially during this period of time, are there still a lot of design requests for Airfoil, or how's the market treating you guys?
Yeah, the market has treated us decently, and I promise to not just be PC with the answer, but be just very blunt and straightforward about it. It definitely created a period where people were quite scared, especially clients are quite scared, and they're looking for what is any cost they can cut. So it definitely was, I think, a moment of truth for us of have we built a service offering that can really hold up, not just in good market conditions, but in bad market conditions. We did not see cancellations really during this time, aside from two. But unfortunately, both of those cancellations were clients who they were directly affected by FTX Ventures. For example, there was one that was waiting on FTX Ventures and Alameda to co-lead, basically waiting on about $30 million to be wired from them. And for some weird reason, they stalled for 2.5 months. And so they were coming to us saying, hey, our lead isn't coming through. And this is before FTX crashed. And that's when we knew something might be a little amiss, because it's quite weird for a fund of their size to just sit on their hands instead of send over the money. And of course, when the news came out, they called us and they said, hey, we may have to lay off our entire team. So we probably can't keep working with Airfoil. Is there anything we can do to wind down? So that's a little bit rocky. But I think what I would say is that this downturn has affected the cryptocurrency markets quite a bit. I don't actually think it's having as much of an effect on early stage venture in crypto as many people would expect. And I think it really just comes down to this. Blockchains are great. and they're a great way to create an interoperability layer between applications. They're a great way to store data and information. And of course, when it comes to decentralized finance, there are tons of applications of DeFi, especially in markets that lack access to a stable and reasonable financial system. And those applications have not changed, even if the market conditions have, right? And so while there may be recession or a depression within our industry, within our space, it doesn't mean the economy goes away. It means the economy goes down. So as long as so that's a long-winded way of saying, honestly, we've managed so far, and I just knock on wood that we continue to be very stable through this time. And also, the one thing that helps us here is most of the clients we work with at Airfoil are long-term. So that's one thing that I think differentiates us in some ways. I think most agencies, they tend to jump in for a few months, a fresh coat of paint, and then they hand off the work. And of course, we do that from time to time. There's plenty of projects we've done that for, but also there's plenty of projects for which we've worked for multiple years. Right? We've been in this for a while and built long-term relationships with the founders that we work with. There are folks that have been using us for over 2 years now. They haven't canceled, they haven't left, and we're really glad about that because it means it at least validates part of our model during this time.
Yeah, nice to hear that you actually had like a signal ahead before Alameda crashed.
Well,
Then they
I
actually
didn't know
ran out of
Alameda would
money.
crash. I'm not saying that, but I
Yeah,
was just something's off here.
yeah. That was that's an interesting take. Do you do a tweet on that as well? You actually could tell ahead of time that Alameda had issues with their finances.
I'll say it as well, though, and this is just a general thing for the sector, because I think there's another shoe that's going to drop here, and it's not just like Alameda and FTX, which is we've tolerated, how would I put it? We've tolerated a lot of bad behavior in this space for a long time. And we've tolerated a lot of companies, including companies in prominent positions in our sector, that do shady things on a regular basis. And the lesson from this should be, just because you have no proof of fire, if you keep seeing smoke, there probably is a fire, or at the very least, you should assume there is. When we see centralized exchanges that cannot explain their reserves, cannot explain who regulates them and under whose jurisdiction they operate under, those should be red flags. And at some point, it's not about how large the exchange is. It's not about how prominent they are or how well known they are. None of those things defends you in a period like right now. FTX was the second largest exchange in the world. It should serve as proof that is no actual protection against a leadership team that isn't doing what they should. So we ought to really be evaluating things in crypto more in traditional terms. Whether it's investments, that we should be evaluating them the way we would evaluate, frankly, any Web 2 company. Whether it's user experience, where we shouldn't be giving companies a pass because they're building on Web 3, and we should be expecting them to bring in some things that are very standard. So one point that I riff on a lot when I give a variation of this talk at a few conferences, and it's called Why Web3 UX Sucks and How to Fix It, is I talk a lot about onboarding. Because across most normal applications that you work with on a regular basis, when you get started, there is some sort of onboarding flow. And it collects a little bit of information from you. It asks you for your name, it asks you for emails, it set a password, whatever. And most people think now that we're building on top of blockchains, we don't need that anymore because you can just connect your wallet to every application. And so one thing you may have noticed is that most DeFi applications largely skip this. They simply just throw you into the app itself. They may or may not even have a landing page. Curve being the example that I know that Sherry brought up last night in the Twitter thread. Curve is probably my go-to example because there's no sort of background on what Curve even is. The assumption is if you're on curve.fi, you already know, right? And so you get to the application, you go to the top right corner, you connect your wallet, and then all of a sudden the application, which was there but was unusable, right? So many, whether we're talking about Curve or we're talking about Yearn, you get to the application, everything's just zeroed. All the buttons are there, but if you click them, they do nothing. But then if you go up to the top, you connect your wallet, and then now the application works, but you don't know what it does. So then, now I'm going to navigate to the documentation section. I'm going to go read the docs, and then I can come use the app, right? That's not at all the way things work in Web 2, and that's for a very good reason, because onboarding flows aren't just about collecting user information. They're about priming the user to have a successful experience throughout their experience with the application. It's asking for information from the users. It's asking them, what do you want to do today? It's leading them to the right pieces of the documentation that they need. And so I think that in certain ways, we've tried to reinvent some things that didn't need reinvention, right? It is great that we don't need to ask for usernames and passwords anymore. But the other piece of onboarding around making sure your users are ready and excited and informed when they actually enter your application, right? Honestly, most DeFi doesn't do this well. And the consequence of this is that it adds an air of almost, I would say, sketchiness to our space. When the way to interact with DeFi, if you're a newcomer, is basically go on YouTube and start looking up videos on how to use a particular protocol, a lot of people just say, I don't want any part in this. And then we lose out on impacting the people we really want to impact. I'm somebody very much is a true believer in the power of cryptocurrencies, of decentralized finance, of Web3, especially on people that lack access to these sort of stable systems in their home countries. And so the fact that I can't tell them to easily replicate the sort of trades that I'm making because the dexes that they're trading on are really difficult to use, or I can't easily tell them how to replicate my financial strategy and how I stake on various protocols because it's so hard to use, It means that I, as an American guy who has a bit of cash, right, I get the benefit, and the people who could be benefiting from this that don't have those privileges don't, because they're just like, this is too hard for me. I feel sketched out. I don't want to take part. So sorry for the little bit of a rant there, but that's the reason, I guess, that I am animated about this issue. It's because, to me, this is the greatest shift of power ever, from frankly those who have to those who have not, is the growth and development of cryptocurrencies and Web3. And the fact that UX is one of the core things holding us back from realizing that vision, it's frankly like why Airfoil exists as a company and why I wanted to jump in the first place.
Yeah, no, I totally understand how you feel. Whenever I use some of these DeFi protocols, usually it's just a landing page with barely any information, launch app, and I'm thrown into it entirely without any understanding of what's going on. And like your point on YouTube tutorials, most of them don't suffice as well because it's usually very badly edited. It's like just a screen recording with their face maybe at the side.
Yeah.
And you don't even know whether to trust it or not.
You know what? Even worse,
saying?
it's one of those, you know how often this is true, right? On YouTube, you go to look for a tutorial, and the account, right, that has made the tutorial, they're a scammer. They're not a trustworthy person. This isn't Vitalik hopping on a screen recording. This is somebody's, you want to get rich quick? Do you want to become wealthy tomorrow? Follow my channel. And I don't want those people to be the people that newcomers to the space are listening to. I want the protocols themselves, and I want well-designed interfaces to be how they learn how to use these tools.
Yeah, definitely. And your point on the landing page, we should inform, we should excite. Maybe you, since you're in the position where you run a design studio, a big one in crypto, and you guys already serve over 90 plus 5 protocols, if I remember correctly. I guess just maybe you can tell me what do I need on the landing page to ensure that everyone's well informed of how it operates, and what kind of information do I need to collect from the user as well?
Oh, for sure. I actually love this because, so for a little bit of background, when I was in high school, I did debate, and I competed, and then internationally I competed. And I only bring this up because that's where I first started learning, I think, communication and how people kind of perceive information. And that's what led me to then, when I was in university, I was a cognitive science researcher before I ever wanted to jump into startups or anything in the tech sector. So I've always been fascinated by how people perceive information. So I give you that background because whether it's a landing page, whether it's interface copy, whatever it happens to be, I don't think about this as an aesthetic question. And I think one thing that I like about Airfoil is that we have so many different designers that come from different backgrounds and perspectives, right? So many of them, they have a different approach than I do. But I always see it as a psychology question, which is I have a limited amount of someone's attention, and my job is to do two things. First, I want to take as much of their attention as I can. I want to increase their interest so that they give me more of their attention. Because if they give me more of their attention, then I will have a better opportunity to explain what I'm doing and convince them to jump on board. And the second thing is, in that limited window that I have of their attention, I need to make sure to get whatever point I have across, I have to get it across as quickly and succinctly as possible. So this, when it comes to landing pages, impacts copywriting, of course, but it also impacts page layout. One trick, for example, that I say to founders quite a lot is, let's think about your landing page not like a landing page. Let's think you were putting together a PowerPoint presentation, right? So what works and what doesn't when you're doing a PowerPoint presentation? If there's a lot of text on the page, you've probably sat in a meeting before where someone's doing a PowerPoint. Did you read all of the text on that page? Probably not. Probably not. You read the headline, you read the subheader, and you read one of the bullet points, and then you probably stopped reading there. And you more rely on somebody's narration to carry through. Why is that? It's because of human psychology. It's because of, frankly, our limited attention spans, right? And so time and time again, when we see user testing done on landing pages, I've used software before, for example, that uses the webcam of a computer to do eye tracking. So I can then create a heat map of where on the page people's attention is going to. And long story short, it basically goes to the headlines. People read headline 1, headline 2, headline 3. They don't read headline 1, subtitle, and then they don't read it in sequential order. Your attention jumps between the biggest and most prominent parts of the page and then comes back to the sequential parts after. You don't read the page top down, right? So in the case of a PowerPoint, imagine as if you really can only assume that your users are reading the slide titles. Don't assume they're reading any of the bullet points. They probably are not. They're only reading the bullet points for sections that are particularly interesting to them. So the reason I give the PowerPoint example is that I was always told, if you want to do a really great pitch, if you're pitching your startup, what you got to do is make sure that the titles in your presentation are almost like the pitch itself. So an elevator pitch will have, let's say it has 6-7 sentences to it, right? 60-second elevator pitch. You take each one of those sentences is a slide, and then you put the bullet points under those sentences, right? So if somebody only reads the titles, they can understand what you're doing. And if somebody reads the titles and the bullet points, they can get more context in what you're doing. So why do I bring this up in the course of talking about landing pages? Because, for example, I see so many websites that what they do is they start with what they are doing. So if I were to, I'm going to go to the MetaMask website right here.
Yeah, let me pull it up as well.
Yeah. Which is, the MetaMask website is okay. It's not the greatest, but I'll step through it. So a crypto wallet and gateway to blockchain apps, right? So you see that as the first headline. Buy, store, send, and swap tokens, explore blockchain apps, own your data. Okay, that's solid. But the thing is, I have to operate on the assumption that no one is reading. Start exploring blockchain applications in seconds, trusted by over 30 million users worldwide. Now imagine, and I'm sure you've seen this on another website, imagine if trusted by over 30 million users worldwide was a headline in and of itself, right? Then I would read it, and then it would have an impact on me because I would say, oh wow, it's trusted, right? But they don't do that. They put it in the body of the page itself, which means I probably won't read it. And then at the bottom, it says, get started. And then it says, what is MetaMask? And then it says, your key to blockchain applications, right? But what does that actually mean? I don't think if you read the headlines on this page, you can totally understand what MetaMask is. You get a little bit of context, but it's not super, super clear. Because the mistake here is they put the information in the copy. They don't put the information in the headline. I'm sure we've been to plenty of websites where you will literally see a section that is just called features. It's just called features. It doesn't say anything else. And then below it, you have a list of features. The secret is no one is reading that list. Because when users come to a landing page, and testing has backed this up, you have between 4 and 5 seconds to convince them to keep reading or they will stop reading. So your job is capture their attention with something that makes them feel, wow, this is something stellar. So we love a product called Basecamp. The website's basecamp.com. And here's the way they do it. Here's the way they do it. So for context, they're a project management and a communication tool, an online SaaS product, right? They're refreshingly simple and remarkably effective project management platform. Managing people and projects under pressure is tough enough. Unfortunately, lots of software makes it worse by overcomplicating things. Basecamp's different. So here's the thing. I don't totally know what the product does yet. I don't completely understand what it's going to do for me, but I am interested, right? Basecamp's different. How is it different? I want to know. I want to know because the copy is giving me enough that I am intrigued, right? Now, then they have a video overview, and then they have a lot of copy. And I love the Basecamp example because it violates a lot of rules we think that exist in landing pages. It has a ton of text on there, but they have done the work at the top of the page to get me interested so that when I actually go later down the page and have to look at more complexity, I want to read it, right? So they've taken my attention span up from that 4 to 5 seconds that we entered with. They've increased it to 30 seconds. And gradually as the page goes on, they're going to keep increasing my attention span. I'm also going to bring up real quick the folks on Glow Wallet. So Glow Wallet is one of my favorite crypto wallets out there. The team, this is the same team behind Luma. If you're familiar with the events tool there, they're a wallet on Solana. I love that actually in the landing page, they have a quote from Raj at Solana. Great designers are finally coming to crypto. I totally agree. So what do you see first? And everything on this page is intentional. So I really hope someone from Glow is here and I've picked up on the right things, right? On the left, you have black text. Your new favorite Solana wallet awaits. On the right, you have a list of features, but they're in gray. Why? Because the slightly larger text on the left and the darker text on the left is going to pull my attention to the left first. Then I'm going to move to the right. If the right was, say, colorful, it would pull my attention to the right first, and I would ignore the text. So they're doing a good job of managing my attention here. Your new favorite Solana wallet awaits. Oh, wow. Okay. I should be interested in this, right? My new favorite. That's exciting. That's an exciting text. Why? Let's compare that to MetaMask. MetaMask, a crypto wallet and gateway to blockchain applications. Glow, your new favorite Solana wallet awaits. Big difference. One of them makes me want to read the page, one of them does not. Then you scroll and you see all the features. Swap coins with zero fees, all your activity in one place, effortlessly explore NFTs. The app looks awesome. Stake and earn SOL, connect to apps on the desktop, all of that. And it's such a stunning and well done landing page. But I remember I was talking to Dan Liu at Glow, and we were talking about the app and talking about the landing page. And I said, I love your landing page, man. It looks amazing. And he's, what do you mean? It's not good at all. I was like, what do you mean it's not good at all? It's because we're telling the user what the features are, but we're not explaining why they should care. Why do the features matter to them? So I say that because there's still ways this page could be even better, which is right now it's about effortlessly exploring NFTs, all your activity in one place. But there's more they could do, I think, on copy to tie it together around a narrative, right? So swapping coins with zero fees, all your activity in one place, effortlessly explore NFTs. What is the theme here? What connects all of these things together, aside from that this will be your new favorite Solana wallet? It's that we're making crypto simple, right? Imagine if you could just interact with crypto in a way that was more easy than Web2. It would take the complexity out of crypto. One place for everything, right? Like those ideas, focusing on those ideas. When we worked on Drift Protocol, we were brainstorming their team how to pitch Drift. And Cindy and I would just go back and forth quite a bit on this. And eventually we're like, wait a second, what fundamentally are we trying to do with this DEX? We're trying to make a decentralized exchange the best way to trade, right? We're trying to make the experience of trading on a DEX equivalent or better to that of trading on a centralized exchange. So that should be the theme that every single feature on the Drift website ties into. And Trung's in the audience. Trung's actually one of the designers that worked on Drift. And that made its way into the copy, even just looking at the website today. Our mission is to deliver the best trader experience on chain, right? Because then to somebody that is a trader, they hear some language that suggests the mission, and it buys them that additional interest so that they can do exploring.
Yeah, nice. And yeah, really, really nice of you to bring us through all the different websites. Yeah, I agree with you. Glow's website is a lot more informative than MetaMask. At least I know the key examples as to how I get access to blockchain applications and how I can use, I guess, a Web3 wallet. And yeah, on your point where you said, Solana has much better designs, or user interface. I understand you yourself, Foy, also, I guess, helped out a lot of Solana projects. So I was wondering is there any sort of design methodology that you guys use to approach designing these DeFi protocols? And I guess another question I do have is with regards to Solana going mobile and there's more mobile applications, is there also a necessary improvement where it just goes beyond the browser?
Got it. I want to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. So I think you're asking about what process we use to work with projects, and then what was the second question there?
With regards to, I guess, since you guys work with a lot of Solana projects, I believe you guys might have also helped out with some of them going towards mobile applications.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess just curious with your thoughts regarding DeFi protocols going mobile. Is there a necessary, I guess, user experience that we need to build on as well?
Yes. So that I definitely have a strong view on it. And it really is for this reason, right? I don't think that if you are a trader that you're probably going to want to prefer to use Mango or Drift or something like that on mobile, because at the end of the day, I can certainly see the use case, but I've done a lot of user testing and with sort of that type of user, and long story short, it's better experience on desktop. So that's true. But that's, of course, only one, I would argue, even very limited implementation or use case of cryptocurrency and Web3. The vast majority of users of any kind that utilize the internet in any way are interacting with it mobile first today. In many countries even, right, there are people, they have a phone, but they don't have a computer at all because the phone has become a personal computing device. And even if they have a personal computing device, the number of hours they spend on their phone versus their PC, they're spending far more time on their phone. If you're building a game, if you're building even a financial tool, right, even a staking tool, right, the reason there's all these fintechs that have sprouted up in the US and Asia over the past few years, they're mobile first. The reason that these new neobanks, like Chime, for example, are mobile first is because for the average Joe, right, they're using their phone for everything. They're using their phone for their banking, they're using their phone for their messaging, for calls, they're using their phone because the phone is a gateway to applications that interact with the real world. This is actually something that Apple understands very well. If you ask Eddie Q at Apple what their device strategy is, they say that the iPhone or the iPad is a device designed to pull you back from the iMac. The iPhone is a device that's supposed to pull you back from the iPad, and the Apple Watch is a device that's supposed to pull you back from the iPhone. The idea is that eventually you want the technology to fade into the background and you go about your life and you use the smallest screen, you use the sort of minimum size interface that's possible. And eventually that applies to the rest of your life, right? So you have a smart fridge and you use the smart fridge to order a refill of your groceries as opposed to using the phone, right? You just integrate those experiences. So the reason I bring that up is we've made a really big regression, I think, in crypto, where we've gone back to the era of everything needs to be on web and everything needs to be on desktop. And I think that Solana's move to push forward the Solana mobile stack, I think a lot of people don't understand why they did what they did. But I think their real goal is they needed to do something like Google with the Google Pixel, which the Pixel did not sell well for the first few years. I think only recently do I know people that use Pixel phones. And of course, now Pixel phones are quite popular, but they weren't at the beginning. I had the first Pixel phone when it came out. I believe they sold a total of, I think, 150,000 phones. That's how badly the Google Nexus 1 actually sold, right? But what it did was it pushed the rest of the Android ecosystem that was fragmented and had honestly pretty poor user experience to upgrade because all of a sudden there was a competitor with better UX. And what's happening with Backpack and with all of these different protocols that are now adapting their interfaces for mobile, some of those adaptations will offer little value, but others will offer a lot. And to give you a little bit of context here, I talk with founders a lot where we talk about designing for mobile, and they say, if I look at my analytics data, today, 93% of my users are on desktop. Why should I design for mobile? And I was like, you know why 93% of your users are on desktop? Because mobile sucks, so they're not using it on mobile. We can't take our current analytics data to then say we don't need to invest in mobile. But unfortunately, that is the lesson that some founders are taking away. So that's why Solana felt the need to basically say, we're going to push this forward, prove that there actually is an audience for this on mobile, like the rest of the web, and then hopefully that'll result in the industry making different decisions.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, can you also share, I guess, like some of the protocols you guys helped with to become mobile? Mobile, you said Backpack, right? Any other examples?
Sorry, we did not work with Backpack.
Oh, okay, my bad.
I think actually a very good example would be for those in Solana, you probably have a .sol domain name. And if you bought one through Bonfida, through the Solana name service, your experience was probably not the greatest. In fact, the experience was almost unusable on mobile. The old flow with the Solana name service was that you would go to this website, that I would encourage you to look it up on Wayback Machine, because you can see the before, and then we worked on the new version, so you can see the after. And I don't want to be too glib about it, right? Bonfida is an incredibly impressive organization, and they came to us because they knew that there were some issues with the Solana name service and its usability. And actually last year at the Hacker House, Solana Hacker House in Singapore, I gave a presentation on UX. I mentioned the Solana name service because as our designers were onboarding, as we're hiring designers and bringing them to the company, one of the first things they wanted to do was get a .sol domain name, but they were having trouble figuring it out. So here was the old flow. You go to the Solana name service, and then you see, first of all, it says names on Solana. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the application is. At no point does the page really explain why you would want a Solana domain name. It just says you can. And then there's a leaderboard where you can see other people's names and how expensive those names are, right? That's your takeaway, is that, well, you can buy them, and apparently some of them are worth a lot of money. Okay, so then I click to say explore domains. And then I see a grid, a 3-column grid of other names that people have bought. These are names that I cannot buy. These are names other people have bought. So I can go and explore, but then there's no actual CTA. Now, what I had to do actually was the search box at the top of the screen that just says search for a name, right? There's no go button. There's no search button or anything. There's just a search box. I would have had to type in the name that I want into the search box, press enter on my keyboard, and then when no result comes up for an existing name, it will say reserve your name. That is seriously the flow, right? And the worst part is, if you're on mobile and there's no button to actually search, right? Technically, if you click return, it will search on mobile. But for most mobile users, nothing will show up, and they literally cannot complete the flow. And then it gets worse, because then when you would go to actually reserve it, it had a bunch of steps, right? So one step, for example, is size. You want to select the size of the data store on chain, which of course affects renewal fees, right? So how do they explain this to users? There's a page that just says, what size do you want? And there's a drop down with numbers. That's it. It should come as no surprise that was not converting very well, but also on mobile, it's unusable. It was rough. So internally, we had recorded a little screencast for our employees, teaching them how to buy a .sol domain name. Bonfida reached out to us. We started working with them. We did a full redesign of the site. And now the site is fully mobile responsive, but we've made sure that at not just the desktop viewpoints, but also at mobile viewport widths, right? Every page, the action is present on screen and context is present on screen. If I give you an example, when you go to search for a domain name on the new site and you go to the page that's the info page. So what that means is I want to buy airfoil.sol. So I type in airfoil.sol, I click search. It says, hey, this domain name is available, right? And then it gives me the button that says you can buy this domain name, you can save it for later. On desktop, on the left, you have those actions, but on the right, you have a section that says, why buy a Solana domain name? And then it explains, it says, it makes money transfer easier because people don't need to remember your wallet address. You can potentially host web pages and host projects to this address. It sort of gives the bullet points for why you should care. And on mobile, we designed it such that those bullet points are at the bottom of the screen, and you don't need to scroll to reach them. So no matter if you're using it on desktop or mobile, you're always presented with the action we want you to take, which is to buy the domain name, and the reasons why you should take that action at the same time, if that makes sense. So I think that's a good example of one case where we made something mobile responsive. I still think we should go further than this, and I still actually think that a lot of applications should just build their own native apps. What NounStyle, which is not a project that we worked on, around a mobile app where people can actually engage with governance on chain, and they can just connect with Wallet Connect to pull their NounStyle or their Nouns NFT and then be able to explore governance proposals. I think that more kind of DAOs and platforms need to be doing things like this to make it easier for people to engage with them. The last point there, Discord is horrible. It's basically, if you join more than 10 communities, you end up joining 0 because you can't keep up with that information. So I think that it's important that we don't let Discord just own the mobile experience for the products we're building. yeah, maybe you can start off with that, but eventually you got to build your own, just like any other product or any other company in Web 2.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks for bringing us through Bonfida. Yeah, I am looking through the naming service, and yeah, it's very simple. I search the name I want. It tells me the price, add to cart, why I should get it. I think that's very important, giving them clear understanding as to what's the product for, and yeah, even alternatives to the name. And yeah, you mentioned how Discord, you're in many communities, but actually you're in none. I really agree with that as well. Personally, yeah, there's just way too many servers. On top of that, each server has too many channels. Everything's pumping all at once. Each one has its own notifications. And yeah, it's just very cluttered, very confusing to use. Even for, let's say, my mom who just got on a Discord server for an NFT, she also had difficulty navigating through just the different channels within it. Yeah, she's like 50. So I think you're right about that. But case in point, are there any alternatives to Discord at this point in time, or are you going to build it?
I think there are. So I'll mention the one in particular that we're working on right now, but there are also more. So there's a company called Comm, COMM, and their website is comm.app, COMM.app. And we recently just started working with them, but we're really excited. And we're also investors as well through Airfoil Ventures. We're just, anyway, thrilled to get started with them. They're building crypto native chat for DAOs, for funds, for social clubs, etc. It's basically a bunch of ex kind of meta folks who are putting this together. But in addition to that, there are plenty of other players as well. There's a chat app called Geneva that basically I would describe it as a forked Slack for communities. And they are now pivoting to focus on Web3. So I'm forgetting which fund backed them recently, but they just completed a pretty large fundraise. And I'm forgetting. Anyway, it's a crypto fund that actually led their latest round because they want to start to work this in. So yeah, Multicoin led their Series A extension funding. Make sure it didn't lose me there. Yep. As well as Polygon Ventures, Dapper and Flow, and Solana Ventures. So I would anticipate that their product is going to pivot pretty hard in the kind of crypto direction. And it's a good app. It's a good chat experience overall. And so if you just introduce the token gating piece, it's incredible to me that the way that you join these Discords at all, right, is you get an invite to join the Discord, you jump in, and immediately, you know what? It's just like onboarding flow free DeFi, right? You jump in and it doesn't work because when you join the Discord community, you jump in and you are of course banned from actually being in it yet because they haven't verified that you're a legitimate user. So then a bot messages you and it says, hey, you've got to go through this process to verify who you are on chain. And not all of these bots are even that trustworthy. So you've got to connect your wallet to this bot that you don't know, that is not from the community you intended to sign up for. Then they go through the authentication process. Then you get in a little bit further into the community, but wait, you don't have access to all of the chats yet because you need to accept the code of conduct. And so a different bot messages you for that and says, hey, please go read this code of conduct and accept it. And then you have to say you accept it. But then you still don't have access to the community because you've got to go to a page and you have to respond to a message with a certain emoji in order to label which type of user you are. And then you get access to the community. Look, if you're an enthusiast about this stuff, as I am, and as I'm sure many people in the audience in the room are today, you will jump through whatever hoops you need to jump through, right? Because this stuff is interesting and exciting and all of that. If you're the average person, you do not have time for this shit. And you're just going to drop off and say, you know what, I'm just going to go back to whatever else I was doing. This doesn't really seem to be high value enough for me.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying. It really resonates with how I feel about crypto as well. And I guess that's where UX comes in. I think not many people understand this, but like what you're saying, the flow and what kind of information you put out there, the copywriting really does matter and might even increase the number of users interacting with the protocol at the end of the day. Yeah. And it's already 50 minutes. I guess to wrap it up, where do you see crypto UX going? And what do we need to bring further adoption in this space?
For sure. And even before I get to that, I'm also very happy to take questions too from the audience and just try to be as responsible or as responsive as I can to them. And also, Trung and Saget are here. The two of them are really incredible product designers, and they were two of the first people that I hired at Airfoil, and they've worked on so many amazing projects here. Trug and Saga, if either of you wants to come up, let me know, and would love to share the stage with you. But to answer the question around what do we really need in our space, I think that we have lived in this time where just because you can say that you are building in Web3, you honestly get a free pass on a lot of core parts of user experience and things that you know what, I'll quote a person that I probably shouldn't quote, what he was totally right on this point. I remember seeing Do Kwon's pitch for Terra at the very beginning. And what he basically said was, in a traditional business, we look at monthly active users, we look at user retention, we look at kind of those traditional metrics of whether or not a product is succeeding. And if you were to judge based on those metrics, honestly, most crypto products fail because they don't do a very good job of re-engaging their users. User churn is really high, user usage is really sporadic, and there's these really difficult onboarding processes and flows. And what is amazing to me is that crypto has gotten this far. It shows to me that people are on board with the vision we are building towards. They like the idea of decentralized finance. They like the idea of owning the product of your work online and not basically living in a virtual world where everything you do is owned by a third-party corporation. These are unifying ideas, and they are putting up with a pretty poor experience because of how much they believe in the same things that we believe. So what do we need to do? We need to make our experiences better. We have to have onboarding flows that describe to the users what the product actually is. We need to improve our copywriting so that we are answering a real problem, right? We're not inventing a problem. We're solving a problem that users have. We should be talking to people and learning about the gripes that they have in their everyday lives and finding ways to solve it with Web3. We should be building for the devices that they're actually on, which means, yes, building on mobile. We should be doing user testing with users that are fresh to the product, not just testing with members of our Discord, although that's a good way of doing some basic feedback, but we should be going to people who are fresh and new and know nothing about the product, putting the product in front of people, seeing how they react to it, and making changes accordingly. And I would also say that, and I don't have to make this argument as much as when we started the company, honestly, I had to explain what design was to crypto founders and why it mattered. And we don't really have to do that anymore because I think that people have realized that design makes a difference, right? When we started working with the folks at Utopia Labs, for example, and they're making it so that DAOs can pay their contributors on chain, right? They came to us immediately knowing this would be an important priority for them because they had 3 other competitors. And if you have 3 competitors all trying to do a similar thing to you, then you have to compete on user experience. You have to say, we're the easiest way to pay your contributors on chain and do it meaningfully differently, which is why we get the opportunity to work on that project. But still, I get pushback sometimes. And still, I hear from people that they're like, yeah, do we really need to make this investment? At the end of the day, most people in crypto are enthusiasts anyway. They probably have enough background to understand the product. And what I'm basically saying is the crypto economy has to still grow, right? The reason that we see so much instability is because it's still a small segment of the world population that actually uses cryptocurrencies or blockchains in any way, shape, or form. How are we going to build usable DeFi if the number of users is so low that large whales have a crazy amount of sway over the markets, right? At what point is that actually decentralized finance versus centralized finance among a small number of players? So I think the space is very dependent on continued growth, and continued growth will only happen. We have exhausted the supply of people interested in the mission of crypto and willing to do a lot of work to get there. We now need to reach the people who are interested. They can be convinced, and they're willing to do a little bit of effort to get there. And we haven't even brought, I think, the UX bar high enough for them yet. I think we need to in order to succeed. Let me just give you one final example here as well. As of course, I do spend some time in South Korea.
Yeah, happy to hear another one. Let's go.
Who here knows about Kakao Talk? Kakao Talk is like the WeChat of South Korea. Basically, you do everything on Kakao, right? Kakao invested in Clayton, the Korea-based blockchain, and smaller chain I believe they're a Cosmos chain. I'm forgetting if they are, or built on Cosmos SDK. And they integrated a mobile wallet into the KakaoTalk app. So what that means is you use the same app you're normally using, the equivalent of WhatsApp or Telegram or anything like that, and there's just a page. You can go to the page, you scan a QR, you can instantly connect with any application that you want to on the Clayton chain. So they met users where they were, and honestly, the Clayton ecosystem is relatively well put together. I think so this is not something I normally say, so I'm trying to figure out like what's the best way to put it. I think everyone should pay attention to the Korean ecosystem because 40% of the Korean population owns crypto. It's the highest of any country in the world. The ecosystem there is among the most mature of any country globally. And even in the case of Terra, the really sad thing was why Terra took off the way it did, and unfortunately why so many people lost money, because Terra was damn easy to use. Terra Station was one of the better first-party wallets out there. I know it was a little more early adopter focused. Terra applications had better UX by far. But you know why? Because in Korea, cryptocurrency usage had already gotten so high that the regular people, the normies, were already in crypto. So in order to launch a project in Korea, you had to launch a project that had good enough UX for the masses. So they did the work to get there. Unfortunately, that meant that more Koreans got wrecked by Anchor because it was also easier to give Anchor your funds because of how easy they made the experience. But it showed that it's a sort of a better future is possible here. And imagine, right, if I wake up in the morning and I'm on my phone and I open a news reading app, and that news reading app has a bunch of newsletters inside it, and I have a set of tokens in my account. Every time that I open a news article, some tokens go to the original author. This happens behind the scenes. I don't really see it as it's happening, but it allows me to pay and compensate creators. So I'm interacting with content, and I'm doing so through a wallet application that also has a bunch of mini programs, like WeChat's mini programs. So then I decide to close out of reading my daily news brief, and I go and I want to call a car to work. And I go into a different application, which is a decentralized network of different car providers that allows me to select across Uber and Lyft and Grab and local taxi services and all of that listed on the platform. I get matched with the driver. Again, the tokens leave my account, probably in a stable coin denominated in my home currency, and then I go to work. When I get to work, I then use an NFT that is my NFT door pass, which even our office in Singapore, we have an NFT gated lock. So members of the Airfoil team will get an NFT that they can then use. It says that you are a member of the Airfoil team, and then they can tap their phone with NFC, and then they can unlock the door. So I get to my office, I open my wallet application, I just tap my phone and I go in. Now here's the important thing to notice about this story of starting your day. Does any of it sound difficult to you?
No, yeah,
It's
like
easier than the status quo, not harder than the status quo. Taking advantage of decentralization and interoperability that blockchains provide, but not creating different layers and different points of friction. That's where we have to end up, right? If we end up there, everyone will get on board with us because they will say, that is a better, more seamless, and easier life than the life I have today. But if people believe that the only way to get involved in crypto is to do lots of work, to understand it and use it, then we're not going to convince people of this vision, and we're going to live in our siloed Web 2 kind of internet present.
Yeah, thanks for that amazing narration. And yeah, really does portray the future of crypto. And I think as more big companies like Starbucks, like Nike, adopt more NFT rewards or ways where we can interact with crypto more seamlessly, the masses will definitely get to it. And yeah, if DeFi protocols themselves make their UX a bit more approachable, more user-friendly, we'll definitely get there as well in terms of adoption. And Airfoil definitely is one of the key players here in making sure we get there. Thank you, Phil, for coming on today. It's been a full hour and really love your energy and your vibe. And thanks for sharing all your examples. It's really informative. And yeah, we can really tell from the comparisons between one website to another, the key differences and how UX really does play a huge part in making sure a user is more absorbed by the product and understand it and then goes on to use it for a longer period of time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and we're big fans of Bluejay. And I said to Sherry as well, though full disclosure, we did not work on Bluejay in any way, but an excellent rebrand recently that I think makes Bluejay so much more approachable to people, and it's a really nice direction to go in, and with a good mission as well. We're very happy to partner up on the space today. So thanks so much to both of you.
Yeah, thank you, Phil, for the kind words. And yeah, for everyone else here, thank you for your time, and good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and have a good day ahead. Thanks, Phil.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.